Welcome to another BTL Exclusive, where we're going to talk about the upcoming NFL Conference Championships, joined right here on the Bookit Sports Podcast Network with Jovan and Krabs. Jovan, this one just simply means more for me. I mean, who would have thought the Commanders would be still alive up to this point, as we've got 4 teams remaining? Not me before the season started, that's for sure. But as this team's gained momentum, look, any given Sunday, who knows what happens at 3 p.m. Eastern?
Yeah, literally. The Commanders, I mean, that's one of the most fun stories of the NFL this year. So I'm excited to see them on Conference Championship weekend. Obviously, you are too, but I think the whole world is rooting very clearly for them and I guess the Bills on the other side of the game. So it's an interesting good versus evil battle on both sides.
So the public wants both dogs, you say. Surely that goes well. I can't lie and say I'm not a little scared seeing the Eagles spread moving up from 4.5, the opener, to 6. Obviously not ideal. I'm not going to sit up here and lie to you guys. Don't love seeing that after we just beat them the last time we played them. But, this Commanders team hasn't got much respect in the playoffs. Who knows? Who's to say they can't pull off another crazy upset here? Looks like they're sitting around plus 220. We'll talk about this game more in depth in a little bit here, Jovan, when we go over best bets, PrizePicks squares, anytime touchdown scorers. But I'm excited for Sunday, man. This one just simply means more, betting aside. I'm excited to watch my commies take care of business and hopefully stick it to the Eagles. Nobody wants to see the scumbag Philly Eagles win that game. Come on. Nobody does.
Yeah, not many. I'll tell you that.
No. Well, we'll see how it plays out. We'll go ahead and hop in, talk about this first game for the Conference Championship weekend. Jovan, it's been a while since we've seen an NFC East showdown in the NFC Conference Championship. The Eagles this season, look, they've been dominating when they've been successful on the ground so far this year. 13-2 when they've rushed for over 120 yards on the ground this season, the 4th best record in the NFL. The Commanders, on the other hand, they've allowed an average of 138 yards on the ground this season, the 4th worst number in the NFL. So let me go ahead and summarize that for you guys. It comes down to Saquon in this contest. Is he grubbing? Is he putting up 125 Berg, 150 Berg? Is he carrying the Eagles to a victory? Or does Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne, and co. find some way to slow down the beast in the backfield for the Eagles? In my opinion, Jovan, that's really what it comes down to in this contest.
Yeah, you would think so, because there's been a lot of slander on Hurts' name for the last couple of weeks because he hasn't looked fantastic. Really, the whole Eagles offense as a unit, as far as the passing game goes, hasn't looked fantastic. Hurts has been dealing with a couple injuries. A.J. Brown's been a little banged up, same with pretty much every other weapon in the past game. It's just been Saquon has been consistently bailing them out of games. So now you get a really good matchup against the Commanders' run defense that, even though they're better against the Bucs, not terrible for a majority of the game against the Lions, even though they gave up a couple of chunk plays to Jahmyr Gibbs. It's a great matchup for Saquon.
We'll see how it plays out. You want to start out with talking about our best bets, our favorite plays in the books for this first game this weekend?
Sure.
I'm in. I've got the first half under. Getting in, getting out, Jovan, with the first half under. Thinking there might be some nerves in this game for both QBs. You got a rookie QB. Look, I'm not saying the lights are ever going to be too bright for Jaden Daniels. They might not be. He might just be the next Pat Mahomes straight up. It's tough to counter at this point watching this kid shine in his rookie season. And I think there's some serious pressure on Jalen Hurts as well after the season he's had, very up and down. Maybe the lights are a little too bright early on in this game and we see the defenses shine. It's not that hot of a take to say the Eagles defense comes out hot. They've been playing great so far this season. Top 10 defense in the NFL with ease. And the Commanders defense has impressed me a little bit so far in the playoffs, Jovan. They've done enough. In every game, they've done enough to slow down the pivotal factor of the offense for their opponents. They've done just enough to skate by. Who's to say they can't do it again? I think we get slow offenses coming out, defenses shining. You see Lattimore do just enough in the beginning of the game against A.J. Brown. Sure, you're going to see Brown and Devonta Smith get theirs this game, but I'm thinking it's going to be more in the second half. And if you look at the Cardiac Commanders and what they've done for the majority of the season, sure, they got out to a great start against the Lions in that game last week, 100%. But they've been a second-half team for the majority of the season. I would not be surprised if their offense comes out slow. They struggle to score early on. They make some adjustments at halftime. And then you see the points start flowing from the Commanders and then in turn the Eagles. But I'm seeing a slow start for the offenses in this first game for this weekend, Jovan.
Hard to disagree, especially with it being, one of the rare conference championship games we've gotten in recent memory with two divisional teams that'll be meeting for the third time this season. So, yeah, you can only
Yep.
assume that it's going to be a chess match early, especially being the game scripts, I guess a little more so for the Commanders. It's hard to say for the Eagles because they had Kenny Pickett the second game, but for the Commanders, the game script was, I guess, pretty wildly different in both games, and it was all about kind of making adjustments. So they were able to air it out a little more and had a lot more trouble running the ball in the second game. So you can assume the Eagles are probably going to make off some adjustments from that. And you have a rookie quarterback on the road, so I feel like it's going to be pretty cagey early. I'm with you.
First game of the season when these two teams faced off, the game did go under. Commanders struggled to score in that one. Game 2, even without Jalen Hurts, we saw plenty of points in this one, a 36-33 shootout. Commanders ended up winning that one. I do feel like this game ends up squeaking under in round 3. Typically, when a team plays a squad for a third time this season, I lean the dog in the under. I just think it gives an edge to the dog because they've seen that team 2 times already. They know this team very well. And the under, especially after we saw 69 points in that last game. Nice. I think you got to fade points. And I'm going to do it early on. That way I can root for Commanders points in a comeback in the second half.
There you go. I can respect that. 100%.
What are you thinking for best bets in this game? Go ahead and break my heart. Just get right to it.
Yeah, I like the Eagles. And I don't think it's going to be a game, especially when you're taking like lines around a touchdown. I want to be under the belief that the game can end significantly beyond that and you have blowout potential. I don't think it'll be like that, especially being that I'm with you. And I think it's going to be somewhat of a cagey game early. And also being that it's the Eagles, whose offense outside of Saquon hasn't really been all that impressive throughout the playoffs and the last couple of weeks of the season for the most part. And the defense is the strong point of that team. I just think the one thing or a couple of things that really, really scare me if I'm looking at the Commanders in this game, outside of the fact that it is Jaden Daniels, the lights haven't been bright so far in the playoffs, but the one thing that I can take away from the Commanders is the fact that they've faced who I think, and I've told you this, are the 2 worst defenses that were in the playoffs by a significant margin. And the Bucks and the Lions, who are both super shorthanded, but even healthier, they were not great units to begin with. So it's kind of, I don't want to say easy to assume, but it's you look back at those games and it's a lot easier to recognize what that offense was able to do against the Bucks. He played a flawless game. They played clock control to keep the ball out of Baker Mayfield's hands for the entirety of that game, and they really didn't have any issue getting a bunch of small plays down the field. They ran the ball super well, and same thing with the Lions game. They were a little more explosive in that one. They didn't have to play ball control, but they made all these plays with crispness exactly when they need it. I think the margin is going to be a little different against the Eagles, especially being that this is the third time seeing them. And the big part of this too, I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball all that much and all that effectively on this Eagles defense, even in that second matchup where, like I said, it was more air raid-ish and the Commanders came out and Jaden Daniels looked fantastic. They ran for 113 yards as a team. 81 of those came from Jaden Daniels. So I don't think the run game with Eckler, B-Rob, and I don't know what third down back they're going to go with, whether it's McNichols or C-Rod, who probably should be in the fold, but really isn't. I don't think that's going to be nearly as effective. So you kind of eliminate the run game essentially, and then you also have the Sam Cosmi injury, which is really bad against the Eagles because not only is that terrible in the run game, but in the pass game, I think you're going to get a lot of pressure up the middle on Jaden Daniels, which, yes, he can scramble to the outside. That's how he got 81 rushing yards against them the first time, but puts a lot of duress under a quarterback who's already going to have, I think, a pretty tough time against the Eagles in that secondary, which has been fantastic for a majority of the season and especially as of late, it's been winning them games. So I think when all due comes second half of this game, I think the Eagles defense kind of going to wear out this Commanders offense and make life tough for Jaden Daniels. And of course, when you have Saquon, what better of a closer in football right now than that guy who can get you yards pretty much whenever you want them. So I do, unfortunately for you, think it's the Eagles, Krabs. And unfortunately for all of America.
Yeah. You mentioned the Cosmi injury. I do think that's massive. It's not getting talked about enough. It's going to make our already banged up line that's playing through a lot of injuries even more depleted. I could see Jalen Carter coming through, getting half a sack or getting a sack. He's up for a 0.25 sack square on PrizePicks. He did not have one in that last matchup, but he had 2 sacks last round against the Rams, which kind of scared me off of putting him on this graphic. but I still would not be shocked without Cosme in there if Jalen Carter gets at least part of a sack up the middle at one point in this game.
Yep. I'm with that.
Let's talk about some of the squares we have up here on this beautiful graphic. I'll get it started off. You talked a lot about Saquon Barkley. Well, there's a second running back in town for the Eagles, and you might see him a couple more times than expected in this contest, especially if that Eagles -6 ends up hitting Jovan and they end up just, running the clock out late in this game and wanting to keep Saquon healthy for the Super Bowl, right? If it plays out like you're expecting. I think Kenneth Gainwell gets involved in this offense a little bit more than people are expecting. We've seen this number get bumped up from 9.5 to 11.5, which I love. Thought that was kind of weird. Typically, Sirianni likes using multiple running backs until this season when you bring in Saquon, and clearly he's just been the workhorse, right? Bell cow back, and you just feed him the rock 30 times. You go about your day, you get a win, and then you go home, whatever. In this game, though, Saquon, he's a little banged up. His hand's a little banged up from that last contest. I would not be shocked if we see Sirianni get the backup RB, Kenneth Gainwell, a little bit more involved early in this game against a poor rush defense in the Commanders. Sure, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, they're going to get theirs at points in this game. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure they're going to have a couple deep shots each. But I really would not be shocked at all if we see the Eagles grounded pound this game, end up squeaking out the win like you're saying, or even covering. And if they're up big late, we're definitely going to see a lot more Kenneth Gainwell in the fourth quarter. But even if we don't, all it's going to take is 3 carries for this number to hit against the Commanders' rush defense.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I do think, in the back of my head, even that, though I am an Eagles backer in this game, I feel like Saquon might be, I don't want to say bottled up. It's pretty impossible to bottle Saquon up, but I feel like he might be in like a Derrick Henry situation against the Bills where he looks shockingly slowed down early before he eventually delivers like the death blow in the second half at some point. So I think Gainwell could be a big part in kind of breaking that up. I think he's going to have a big factor in the game with a big runner too. And maybe I was waiting to see if they'd put up a receiving yard square, one of those weird ones that like single digits, or a rushing receiving, which would only add a few. I think he'll be in there.
All right. Maybe we see a little bit more Kenny Gainwell than most people expect with how good Saquon's been. You got a square for the people that you want to share?
Yeah. Fading your new wide receiver too in De'Ami
I don't blame you. Yep.
Yeah, taking his less than 3.5 receptions, which, he's been the guy that you thought he was going to be when you drafted him the last couple weeks against the Bucs and Lions. But I'll go back to what I've been saying. If there's 2 defenses in the entire playoffs that you would have felt confident about attacking down the field with your pass game, not just to Terry, but to De'Ami Brown and the cast of other wide receivers that Jaden Daniels has to do it, you want the Bucs and the Lions. And I don't think it's even relatively close. So the Eagles are playing significant better defense on that side of the ball. So I think De'Ami Brown, while I don't think it's an insanity run necessarily, I think in this game it's going to have to be a lot more Terry winning your one-on-one battles. I think Jaden Daniels is going to be under a lot more pressure. So I don't think the deep shot's necessarily going to be there. And not to say De'Ami Brown can't be used in the short game, but I feel like we'll talk about the other guy who I think is going to have a lot more involvement in that area. So I don't think De'Ami Brown is necessarily going to be put up in as many situations where he's just winning these one-on-one matchups and he's going to be like the deep shot guy. I think he can get one,
right,
but I don't think the volume is going to be there.
I think this is a great play. We know the Eagles secondary is pretty freaking solid, and De'Ami Brown breakout performance in the playoffs. I certainly did not have that on my bingo card in the Big 2-5, but we're here off of back-to-back 5+ reception games where he's played a pivotal part in our success in both those W's. Can we expect a third straight gem of a performance from De'Ami Brown? Probably not. And maybe there's another receiver we're going to talk about here in a moment who gets more involved in the receiving game instead of De'Ami Brown against the Eagles this weekend, right?
Sure. You can skip right to him. Why don't we just jump there? You guys, ATTS.
Revenge game. People forget that as well.
People do forget.
Revenge game. Zacchaeus. He's been a ghost after finishing the season very strong, the regular season for the Commanders, filling in for Noah Brown as that wide receiver too. Had a couple great games to end the regular season. He's kind of gone ghost modes a little bit here in the playoffs. Has not done much yet so far, but I think he'll be more of a factor in the receiving game once Terry's getting double teamed, when Terry's having hell of trouble with Darius Slay. We're going to see Zacchaeus getting involved, not De'Ami Brown, who's been the guy in recent weeks, but Zacchaeus against his former team on a lot of these quick routes, short routes, out routes, passes over the middle. I'm not talking about bombs down the field. I think that'll be more Terry deep shots. But I do think Zacchaeus gets involved a little more heavily in the pass game. And if they're in a losing game script, they're going to need to find somebody because Terry's going to be double covered a lot of this game as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely down for Zacchaeus. I think he's going to be the guy. Maybe the De'Ami Brown sub if they're going to have any threat downfield in the passing game in this one. So I'm with you.
Sure. What do you think about Dallas Goedert? Do you think he gets involved in the receiving game for the Eagles against the Commies?
Yeah, hard not to. He's been Jalen Hurts' safety blanket, and that's with the pass game not being as good as it's been probably at any point when Jalen Hurts has been with the Eagles in the last couple of weeks. So I have no problem with that. 100% think he's going to take his deep shots, but when he has really nothing and everything's underneath, it's probably going to go to Goddard.
Yep. Agreed. I like his more than 4 receptions. Sure, there's some push potential there, but I really do think the Commanders do whatever they can, stack the box, try to eliminate Saquon as much as you possibly can from this game and make Jalen Hurts beat you through the air. And that's when we see Dallas Goedert on a couple of these, not screens, but short passes on the outsides. You're going to see him thrive against a bad defense against tight ends this year in the Commies.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
You got another square for the peeps?
I do. I mentioned Jalen Hurts taking his deep shot, and for everything you just said, I think if you're the Commanders and you're facing not only Saquon, but a pass game and a banged-up Jalen Hurts that's been really struggling as of late, has not looked great at all. What are you going to do? You're probably going to do whatever you can to sell out against a run early. The interesting part about it is the Commanders, for whatever reason, and I say for whatever reason, not that it doesn't have a reason because it's been working. They generated a bunch of turnovers last week, but they were a super heavy man team in the regular season, but they completely flipped the script, and now they're one of the heaviest zone teams in all of the NFL in the playoffs. And like we saw against Detroit, I mean, it generated turnovers. It worked against a really dynamic offense. It helped keep the Bucs in check too in the first round. So I would assume that, especially when your front seven is going to be doing whatever they can to contain Saquon, you're probably going to do the same thing in the back end where it's a lot of zone. The thing is, the Eagles love to take shots against those type of teams. So it could go one of two ways. I think if they play man coverage, I think A.J. Brown is going to dominate and catch this longest completion. If they play zone coverage, one of the best zone coverage wide receivers in all of football is Devontae Smith, who's going to be on the other side. So, again, Commanders, do what you can to stop Saquon. Jalen Hurts is going to have to take his shots in this game to, I don't know, whether it's deliver the dagger early or deliver the dagger late. I know they were super aggressive
or just
with the
open
pass
up the
game
field
early on. Yeah, open up the field. You got to get them to respect the pass in some form or fashion because, I mean, we've all heard the discourse. I don't think anybody with 2 eyes is respecting the Eagles pass game right now. So you got to do something. And it is funny that if you've been betting on Jalen Hurts' longest completion, you have not cashed on his over since the first game against the Commanders on November 14th, that Thursday night game. So it's been a bit. He hasn't been taking too many shots down the field. So I feel like this is where he gets that second cash in 2 months.
I've already seen it. Devonta Smith in the second quarter breaking off a 45-yard catch. Not a touchdown. Probably puts him in the red zone, and the Eagles are moving the rock down the fields after we see the Commanders stack the box, play in, play out, slowing down Saquon in the rushing attack. You're going to see some deep shots in this one. And unfortunately for the Commies, their worst nightmare, Devonta Smith, is probably going to be the guy reeling it in. He dominates and owns the Commanders. He always has. He probably always will. And like you said, if they continue to run zone, don't really see how he doesn't become a factor, at least for a couple deep shots down the field in this one.
Yeah.
That's a really cheeky square that I love. I think that's going to turn green. I'll be tailing that one for sure. Okay.
Let's go.
Looks like we got one more angle that we got to talk about here. We both like Austin Eckler in the receiving game. Jovan, you talked about the Commanders' rushing game in that last contest where they had, a little over 100 rushing yards, but most of them were from Jaden Daniels. If you watched Eckler's rushes in that game, he didn't get many carries, but the ones he did, he actually did have some success in the rushing game. But I do think the Commanders will be playing from behind in this game. I just think there'll be a slow start. Like I said, the first half under. You see the Eagles going to halftime with, probably a 6 or 7 point leads. And then you see the Commies kind of break out a little bit in the second half, playing in an L game script. And if the Eagles do try to blitz, which I don't know if they're going to as much because they did try a lot to blitz in that last game when they lost to the Commies and it didn't really work very well. Jaden Daniels just plays better when teams blitz. But if they do try to blitz, especially with Sam Cosmi hurt on that O-line for the Commanders, you're going to see Austin Eckler, the safety net for the Commies, in the receiving game, catch 4 or 5, shit, maybe even 6, half a dozen dink and dunks from JD5 when he's got Jalen Carter and Co. in his grill.
Yeah, I agree. And for me, I was debating between the catches and the yards for quite some time. I really don't think it's going to matter, but I think just like the Bucs game, I think the Commanders, the way they came out in the wild card game in the first half was very reminiscent of what they did at the end of the trailing game script in week 1 against the Bucs. Same thing. I think what they did against the Eagles, granted, it was a trailing game script in a game that, I don't know, they made it a little closer than I think a majority of the game actually was. So, of course, the Eagles are going to play soft shell coverage and you're going to get whatever you want underneath. But I think the beginning of the Commanders game script is going to mirror the end of that first matchup where they were trailing. And that included a lot of Austin Eckler. That included a lot of the Eagles getting pressure up the middle, which I think now with the Cosmi injury is going to be doubled. So Jaden's going to have to take whatever he wants underneath. So I think this could be like not just an Eckler game where he potentially gets 25 and 4 catches like he's gotten kind of the last couple weeks. He's got his numbers by a bit, not too much. This could be a ceiling game. That's maybe the more of, what do you have, 9 for 89 in that first game against the Eagles. Ladder potential, potentially.
He is relatively well rested, right? He had that second concussion at the end of the season, so didn't play much at the end of the year. Fresh legs. He's been tough to tackle all year. If you've watched Eckler, they've kept him fresh when he's been healthy. He really doesn't get many carries. And it's worked out great, I feel like, for him. I'd like to see him get the rock a little bit more, especially with B-Rob, looking like he's being overused a little bit towards the end of the season. But with that Eckler injury, we didn't really have a choice. He's been really impressive, breaking tackles both in the rushing game and in the receiving game. He's been a tough guy to take down. You typically have had to send a couple dudes to take down Eckler this season. And a lot of people thought he was washed. They thought the Austin Eckler show was done, right, after leaving the Chargers after 2 Moose seasons. Looks like the Commies had the recipe to bring him back to life a little bit. Use him minimally, and you get better quality out of Austin Eckler. And at his age, it makes a lot of sense. And it's resulted in a lot of success, a lot of broken tackles, a lot of big catches.
Yeah, and I think that's, I don't know, one of the most underappreciated things about what Jaden Daniels did in that second matchup against the Eagles, where he looked fantastic. I mean, I know B-Rob is very capable of catching passes too, but Eckler's your guy in that. So, and he did that without Eckler in that game. So there was a lot of downfield passing against a really good defense. And now Eagles are going to make some adjustments, of course, but you're getting the guy back that gave them a lot of trouble in that first matchup. So I'm excited to see what he does.
Same. Could be a big night for Austin Eckler. We might want to even look at taking some demon receiving yard squares, getting some more value on some of these lineups.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. Well, hey, I got one square that I did not put up here that I'm pretty blown at myself for leaving off here, Jovan. This is inexcusable, to be honest with you. Tress Way was left off this sheet, and I feel bad about it. I feel like I got to owe him a written apology or something. They've got a Tress Way 1.5 punts inside the 20 square up on PrizePicks in this game, Jovan, and I'll put meat on tape for this shit hitting. Tress Way, one of the best punters in the NFL. He might not have the strongest leg. He kicks the heck out of the football into the air. That thing gets crazy airtime, and he sticks darts inside the 20. That's what he does. He's got like the lowest percentage of touchbacks in the NFL over the last couple of years at touchbacks on punts. The guy does not punt the ball into the fucking end zone. One of the most annoying things you're watching in the NFL when you're watching your team, the punter trots out there, he kicks the ball in the end zone. Tress Way, knock on wood, he doesn't do that. If anything, he misses a little short, and he'll put the guy on the 13, the 14, the 15-yard line. This is a great-looking square. Tress Way not involved much in the game last week, obviously, because they didn't have to punt much. Their offense looked great. In a game where I'm liking the under, in a game where I'm thinking the Commies' offense comes out a little slow, don't be shocked if Tress Way pins him with 2 darts inside the 20 in this game. And this one might cash a little bit earlier than you'd expect.
The Tress Way square in the conference championship game from Krabs.
Who would have thought? Who would have thought?
Crazy.
Not me. Unbelievable. Kind of like in 2025 so far. We get to bet
you
on
might
Tress
not.
Way.
You might not when those punts actually happen.
Well, yeah,
feel
but
like that's
sometimes you got to trot your best player out
give
there
and
on the
take.
fields, right?
Give and take.
We haven't gotten to see a lot of Tress Way this year, our best player, but because we haven't had to punt much. But in this game, we might need him to. In a nail biter, a low-scoring affair, you might need Tress to pin him twice. Shit, maybe 3 times. See how it goes. I'm liking that square. I'll have Tress Way more than 1.5 punts inside the 20 in at least one lineup. Maybe 2.
There we go.
You got any other plays, angles, PrizePicks squares before we move on to anytime touchdown scores?
I mean, sneak square, I just have to mention because it's up and it is a fully greened out chart on PrizePicks, but it's not supposed to be because he had a bagel last game. But Trent's favorite player, Grant Calcaterra, is up for 2.5 receiving yards.
It got bumped up.
Yeah, he's usually at a half. He was a half against the Packers in round 1, which he got with a 4-yard catch in like the first drive or second drive. And then he was at a half last week and didn't get a single look. At 2.5 this week, which I think is a bit odd. And I've been taking tight ends against the Commanders, I guess, for a bit. The only time I guess it let me down was with Kate Otten when the Bucs didn't have the ball. But took Laporta last week and he was goated in the end zone. I have a feeling Grant Calcaterra is probably catching 1 for 3.
Yeah, I've faded that square a couple times in recent weeks. I'm done. I'm hanging it up. Shit turns green every week. I swear to God. And I think that was at a half before getting bumped up this week.
I figured it is or was.
I'm pretty sure I saw that at a half a yard. Crazy. Grant Calcaterra. I'm sure Trent will be happy to hear that one. That's his guy.
Yeah,
unbelievable. All right. Let's move on to some anytime touchdown scores for this game. All right, Jovan, who do you think is finding pay dirts in the first game of the NFL Conference Championships, Commies versus Eagles?
I want Devontae Smith, the guy that's given the Commanders plenty of trouble over their past matchups, as you brought up and you well know. Because I do think the Commanders, like we were talking about, the defensive switch from a lot of man to a lot of zone, I think is going to be something that sticks. So I think the guy that can take advantage of that the most when we get that Hurts longest completion for 33 plus yards is going to be Devontae Smith over the top with, some coverage. And I would only assume the safeties are going to be shaded down a little bit as much as they can to try and stop Saquon in the run game. And really, if you're the Commanders, what else can you do? You got to sell out to the run to some degree and make Jalen Hurts beat you through the air. The question is, who's catching the bomb? I'm going with Devontae.
Yeah. I talked about it earlier. I thought maybe he gets stopped in the red zone. Maybe he doesn't find pay dirt, but it wouldn't shock me if he does. The Commanders' killer, Devonta Smith, who had 1 solid game against the Commies this year, not 2. He might be getting his lick back here in round 3.
Yeah, the 1 game was probably the best they've played him since he's been in the league.
Yeah, ever. First time we've ever slowed him down once. Crazy. I cannot expect that again. It's got to be Devonta Smith catching a deep pass. All this A.J. Brown talk, reading books on the sidelines. Brother, lock in. Okay, it's going to be Devonta Smith against his zone, the Commander's killer, who probably comes down with that big catch.
You do also have Book Club man up here too.
I got the Book Club guy up here for a touchdown, maybe not his receptions, although it's a very Reddit out chart. I was looking at it for sure on PrizePicks. I do think he finds pay dirt, though. I've already seen it. It fades in the corner of the end zone when they're on the 5-yard line, and they stop running with Saquon, probably on a 3rd or maybe even a 4th down that they go for. A fade against Marshawn Lattimore, and he fucking mosses them, and everyone says, "Oh, Marshawn Lattimore's washed." And that's the one mistake he has in the entire game. I've seen it like it was yesterday. A.J. Brown coming down with a tutty, and maybe the only impact he has on this game. And then your guy, Devonta Smith, is the dude with, 6-7 receptions against the zone.
Yeah, I can respect that. I'm down with it.
Another guy I think might end up finding the end zone, Jovan, Jaden Daniels. It's been a while since JD5 has rushed one in. I'm not saying he's going to catch one, although there could be some trick plays involved in this game. Who knows? We've had Mariota out there under center at times in this playoffs. I think JD5 rushes one in this game. I thought him at plus 205 was some really good value on some sort of RPO or maybe even a read option on the goal line. B-Rob had 2 touchdowns last week, but we know he's been on fumes at the end of the season. Who knows if he'll look as fresh as he did last week against Detroit. We might have milked him for all we got in that game. Eckler, great running back, bless his heart. Is he great on the goal line? No. Although he's been breaking tackles at times this season. Not the best goal line back, obviously not the biggest dudes. I wouldn't be shocked if it's JD5 for the first time in 5-6 weeks rushing one in, finding pay dirt, keeping the commies in this game, and finding the end zone at plus 205 here.
Yeah, I like this too, and I'm glad you brought up Mariota, because the thing that I cannot get out of my head, Krabs, is that failed fourth down that looked like it was supposed to be a fake sneak, and Mariota was going to toss it back to JD5. I can't get it out of my gut that I feel like Cliff comes with something kind of similar to that, but a little altered, obviously, so they don't 100% see it coming. And Jaden Daniels gets in the end zone off of maybe it's a fourth down or third and short or something off of that. I have a weird feeling that there's something like that coming.
For better or for worse, Cliff will get really cute on a play or two in this game. We're going to see how it plays out. That honestly could end up being the difference. He got really cute in a couple plays in the Lions. Some of them didn't work out. Most of them didn't work out. It didn't end up mattering because we just played fucking great in all aspects of the game. It was unbelievable to watch. In this one, though, yeah, you might be onto something there. You might be onto something. Do you think we see Jalen Hurts find the end zone? I'm sure he's minus money, but do you think we get a tush push in this game?
I think it's possible. It's been a while since we've gotten an actual tush push because he scored last week, but it was the long run to open the game, and now he's been more significantly banged up, throughout the game last week since then. So I think we could get one, but that would probably be something in the second half, depending on just how close they are to the end zone. So I don't know if I'm in love with it as much as I was like last week or the week before, for that matter, but I could see it happening for sure.
Certainly looks like a very easy play, minus 115 on the books for Jalen Hurts to find the end zone. I'd probably lean no. I'd probably lean fading him there. I'm with you. He should probably be a little juicier. And considering the injuries of late, he ran one in last week, but it wasn't an old school tush push. Maybe they just go to Saquon for better or for worse on the goal line here. Why not?
To be fair, right? I'm a little surprised. I know his rushing line is significantly lower than last week. It's been trickling up against since it opened, but because of the whole knee injury situation and everything, like it makes sense for him not to be as mobile, but his anytime touchdown price is really not moved because he was also minus 115 last week, which I don't know. My logic would say if we're giving that much respect to the injury and the rushing yards, and the rushing TD should probably get similar respect, but it's not. So that's kind of keeping me around and maybe thinking we're going to get a dagger tush push or something like that. So wouldn't be shocked at all.
You know what I wouldn't be shocked at all about? If the Eagles end up winning this game, if Petty Sirianni finds Josh Doxson in the end zone once again late in this game, if it ends up getting ugly. Not expecting it to, but if it does, you know how Petty Sirianni and co are. After all the shit talking about that terrible trade, getting Doxson involved, wouldn't it be something if he scores in back-to-back weeks?
That would be hilarious. I don't know if it's back-to-back. He scored the first week, didn't he? I don't think he scored last week.
He scored once in the postseason already.
Yeah.
Excuse me if it wasn't last week. But
yeah.
Sure.
That would be hilarious, though. Actually hilarious.
It almost feels like meant to be. Right, but that's only if this game gets out of hand, out of control. The commies cannot let that happen. That would be a massive L. Massive L. All right,
can't let Jahan Dotson dance on your grave for the bowl, man.
You cannot let him get the last laugh. That cannot happen in this game. Please no. Please no. All right, enough talking about my commies and the Eagles. Jovan, you want to talk about game 2, the matchup that most people are probably looking forward to the most? Ah, shit, Jovan. Here we go again. Bills versus Chiefs. Round a million, it feels like at this point. You got the Bills sitting at plus 1.5. What do you know? They're dogs again. Chiefs are barely favorites here at home in this spot. Let's talk a little bit about this matchup. The Chiefs were 4-1 this season against top 10 offenses. Of course they were. I'm surprised they weren't 5-0, to be honest with you, with how lucky they are. The second best clip in the NFL. The Bills this season were 13-3 when they forced one or more turnovers in the NFL this season. Top 5 in the NFL. There's a weird, sketchy Patrick Mahomes Reddit out interception chart on PrizePicks for this weekend. Wouldn't be shocked if he ends up throwing one. That could be huge for the Bills. We'll talk about that more in a moment here. But Jovan, I want to open the floor for you here. First thoughts. Chiefs versus Bills, round a million.
My first thoughts are instantly telling myself, do not go against your gut in this game. And you know what that was, Krabs? From the second, I think I might have even tweeted this, or maybe we talked about this on BTL the day that the Chiefs beat or lost the Bills in the regular season. I was like, God, I was so happy to see the Chiefs lose, know that they weren't going to go through the whole season undefeated. But in the back of my head, I was like, shit, because you know what that means. That was the only legitimate loss that the Chiefs had all year. And now the only team that's standing in between them and the Super Bowl is the only team that beat the healthy, non-sitting Chiefs in the regular season. So knowing that we were probably going to end up with, because I didn't believe in Lamar, of course, or the Ravens, knowing that the Bills and Josh Allen were going to be the team that was in between them and the Super Bowl, and they would have to beat them twice in the season to do it and be the only team to do so, scares the living piss out of me. So as much as I think the world would also love to see the Bills in, and I would too, I cannot get myself to do it. And I think this is just such an unfortunate script for the Chiefs. The only way you could say they're getting their revenge in any possible angle is the fact that the Bills were the only team to beat Patrick Mahomes this season.
Yeah, I hate that so much. It's really hard for me to talk about the Bills, ML, after you talk about shit like that. The Bills being the only team to beat the Chiefs twice in what feels like forever. Are they going to pull it off? I'm still trusting my gut and leaning the Bills on the ML. Maybe there's some spite in there. Maybe there's some hatred for all the Chiefs' love and luck that they've had in the recent postseasons. But I'm trusting my gut here with the pick that I had before the postseason started, and that's that the Bills are due. They're getting a Super Bowl victory this season, and I'm not wavering just because they're a dog. Of course they're going to be a dog on the road. This is the fucking Chiefs we're talking about here, right? The line's not weird. The line's probably where it should be. I've seen more sharps on the Chiefs this week than I expected. I'll be honest. More people with your wavelength, your thought process here in this game, Jovan, giving up on the Bills and giving up on fading the Chiefs. I don't blame you one bit. I honestly think that's the sharp sides. But I didn't hear no bell, and I can't give up just yet. I got to fade the Chiefs one more time.
Yeah, I can respect it. I mean, it feels good from my perspective because I'm winning a unit, or like Trent said, we're all rejoicing in the fact that we do not have to watch Mahomes, Kelsey, and Taylor Swift in the Super Bowl. It's a true win-win.
Yes. It's a good point. If you're looking for a bet in this game and you don't really feel strongly on either side, I'd recommend that strategy, to be honest with you. You take the Chiefs and you either win coins or the Chiefs lose and you don't have to deal with all the fucking annoying Chiefs slurpage for the next 2 weeks. That's a win-win if I've ever heard one.
100%.
But Jovan, I'm in too deep and I'm on the Bills already. And I think Josh Allen, I talk about the Commanders having a team of destiny type vibe. Josh Allen has had the same thing in the AFC. It feels like it's just his year. And maybe he's got one more in him. Maybe he can shock the world. No chance the Bills beat the Chiefs twice in a season, right?
I mean, that would be incredible, Krabs. I'm very much rooting for it. The one thing I'll say, I guess not the one thing, but one of the things that concerns me after watching that Ravens game, the Bills didn't win that game. Lamar and Mark Andrews lost that game. And that's been the story. Like, the Bills kind of forced themselves into this, which is, it's good to a degree because the Bills not being the teams that are on the hook for the mistakes is a story we've known from the end of time, whether it's their defense, whether it's Josh Allen being super loose with the ball. They've kind of flipped that on its head this season. I know the defense has been super banged up, so they haven't really had time to be this rock solid unit. Nobody really expected that coming into the season, but they've been good enough. They stopped the run a lot better than I thought against Derrick Henry. And it was relatively refreshing to see Josh Allen be such a conservative quarterback with the ball in the playoffs. And you had a team on the other side of the Ravens that beat themselves and made every mistake possible to win. It just concerns me going into this game because when have we seen the Chiefs beat themselves?
I've actually seen it in my life. Not once. Not once.
Yeah, not once. And I'm worried that's going to put the Bills and Josh Allen in a spot where he has to be Superman, which he really hasn't been in that spot many times this season. And that would be maybe the Josh Allen of old having to come out.
It's been a while since we've seen that Josh Allen, a turnover-prone Josh Allen who makes mistakes that cost his team a game. But like you said, they've blown out a lot of their opponents this year. Josh Allen hasn't had to be a superhero in every game this season. He's going to have to be in this one to win it. Could that be too much? We'll find out. I'll tell you another bet I like in this game, Jovan, on the books. I like the under. Not first half like I do in the Eagles and Commies. I want the full game. I want the full number here. Under 47.5. The over looks like an easy play on the books. The over is getting nuked with bets. And we're actually seeing this total on the way down from the original opener of 48.5 down to 47.5 now. Thought that was a little bit low. I'm going to fade the offenses in a game where everyone's going to want to bet the primetime over. Bills versus Chiefs. Surely points come with ease, right? This is Pat Mahomes and Josh Allen. Well, defenses play football too, and they get paid plenty as well, and they're going to show up in this contest. The Bills' defense is very, very good. It's very underrated still, once again, because they don't have all the big stars, but McDermott's got his boys locked in, and I don't have to say shit about the Chiefs' defense. Chamari Connor and co., they're locked in. That defense is good as shit. Both these defenses, I'd say, are in the top 5, in my opinion, and everyone's going to be talking about the offenses, talking about the 2 QBs. I want to fade the QBs in a game where we could see lights being a little too bright at times, in a game with some nerves, especially for Josh Allen on the roads. Maybe the under is the play here. And with all the bets coming in on that over, I'll be fading.
Yeah, that's just a classic Krabs play. Under in the greatest game of the year.
Sure.
We need. Live for
no
that.
fun bet. No fun bets pay. They do.
Yeah.
And it's going to pay on Sunday night. Love that play. All right, you want to talk about some PrizePicks squares that we like?
Let's talk about them.
Okay. How about this combo that I've got up here on the screen? Josh Allen and Pat Mahomes, more than 73.5 rushing yards combo. I thought, you know what? Josh Allen, looking at his rushing yard square on PrizePicks, pretty reds. I think if he has to go into superhero modes, it's going to be with his legs in this one. And I think it's going to be way more of a rushing attack in this game than people are expecting with the QBs using their arms. I think we see the legs getting involved plenty. And what do we know about Mahomes? At any time, any big spot, any playoff game when the lights are bright and they need to get a first down, it's always Mahomes breaking to the outside, putting the stupid arm out in front, barely getting enough for a first down. You know he's going to get a couple of those in this game. Why not take the combo rushing yards? I've already seen it. We see the QBs get the legs loose way more often in these postseason games, a little bit more, open to risking injuries, getting down the field a little bit more. And with some pressure on both sides for these QBs, I think you'll see them running like a chicken with their head cut off at times.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all, especially since it's funny. There's a lot of Mahomes rushing squares up on the board this week. They'll look kind of odd when there's been the reports popping up about that his ankle injury might be a little worse than they thought initially. And
oh yeah, sure.
You know, the last time I remember that was a somewhat big thing in the news, and I remember vividly because I nuked it in the playoffs was the Super Bowl against the Eagles.
Yeah, he had like 50 rushing yards.
Yeah, I took his rushing yards. I took his rush attempts. I took everything. That was like my biggest PrizePicks entries of the year at that time. And what do you know? He was literally Lamar. So it's probably going to be like that again.
We saw that this season too, Jovan. There was a game where he was coming off an injury. He got knocked out late in the game or whatever. People are saying, oh, the injury's terrible. Could it be torn ACL? The guy's fucking healthy as an ox the next game. Yeah, healthy as an ox. Running around like he's Lamar Jackson himself. Unbelievable. You're going to see that again this game. I'll take the combo. One of these 2 QBs is going to stand on business, show up, and carry the rock a little bit more often than people are expecting here.
Yep, I'm in on that. You're fading.
All right, tell me about
running back, though.
Yeah. You want to talk about James Cook?
Yeah, let's talk about
real
James
RB.
Cook. I'm interested in hearing that while we're here.
Yeah, I just talked about feet getting active in this one. Then I'm going to fade the starting running back for the Bills here. I want to take James Cook less than 12 fantasy score on PrizePicks in this game for a couple reasons. Obviously, my crabby brain sees James Cook, his touchdown odds. Look, the guy had the most rushing touchdowns in the NFL this season, Jovan, and he's barely minus money to score a touchdown in this game. That seems off to me. The guy scored a rushing touchdown, too, in most of the games this season. Crazy. He's only barely minus money to find pay dirt. So I already love that when I'm fading his fantasy score. And I think that Chiefs D line shows up, shows out. It's going to have to be Josh Allen. Not saying it's going to have to be through the air, but it's not going to be the James Cook show like it's been all regular season. The Chiefs could eliminate him from this game. They're going to try to make Josh Allen turn into that superhero, throwing the ball down the field. I hope he ends up running using his legs. We'll see what he ends up actually doing. Let's hope he can stay conservative, keep the ball secure, but I'm not seeing a big game from James Cook, and I thought his fantasy score would be higher, and I thought his odds to score a touchdown would be way juicier. I want to fade.
Yeah, I figured you were in after seeing that touchdown square. That's pretty funny.
Yep.
But
had to be done. Had to be done. You want to talk about Mr. Travis Kelce and how you're going to spend time here trying to convince me on backing him to do well and successfully?
Trust me, I'm I know damn well I'm never going to convince you to do that, Krabs. Same with the Chiefs. And I mean, if I'm betting on the Chiefs, I'm betting on Travis Kelce. And I guess the big concern that everybody will bring up with Travis Kelce is how they defended him in the first matchup. The Bills did. I mean, they doubled him essentially off the line every single time. So you would think that they're going to go with that same game plan rather than what the Texans tried to do last week. That very obviously did not work. I think the Chiefs are going to definitely scheme around that. And while I definitely do think multiple tight ends will be involved, like Noah Gray, I think is a pretty solid shout as well. The fake Kelce, but I think Kelce is going to be fed whenever he wants in this game. And I think it's particularly important to do that, segue, because Mahomes, I think, is going to load up quite a few bombs in this game. So I think you get Kelce.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I think you get Kelce down the field a lot with kind of the shorter stuff near the line of scrimmage, and you kind of get the safeties built up because the best way to attack the Bills is obviously in the run game. The Chiefs can do that with Pacheco. They can do that with Kareem Hunt, but that's not really how they're built to just be this Army-Navy type offense right up the middle, right up the gut. So they're going to do that. They're going to feed Kelce in the short game, but some of the worst safety group in terms of coverage grades across the NFL is the Buffalo Bills. And I know injuries have played a pretty decent part in that, but when you have guys like Marquise Brown, I know he dropped his chance last week, but you have guys like him, you have guys like Xavier Worthy. I think the beginning of this game for the Chiefs is going to be pretty cagey and all setting up that Pat Mahomes bomb that I think we've been waiting to see in more numbers, I guess, for the rest or really all season, because the offense hasn't been flashy, hasn't been super explosive, but I think you're going to have to be at some point or another against the Bills because that's the best time to beat them. That's the best way to put them on your back foot. And I think you're going to get that from Pat, and he completes one for 35. So I think him and Hurts are throwing a couple bombs this weekend.
You think it's to Xavier Worthy?
I do.
I could
especially
see it.
After, I mean, Marquise got his chance, but Worthy also got his chance, and he came just short of the goal line last week. I think that changes.
We'll talk about that here in a moment when we go over some touchdown scores. What do you think about Isaiah Pacheco? You noticed that receiving yard square that was up there, Jovan, after that last game?
Oh, I noticed, Krabs. You know I'm always looking for those weird receiving yard squares. So just off of first look, of course I'm in. I guess the trouble with the Chiefs is they have, him, they have P. Ryan, they have Hunt. Who's it going to be? Flip a coin. But I see the Pacheco squares, and they definitely look very, very odd. Yeah.
And I'm done with Kareem Hunt. I feel like he's done his job here. I feel like it's time to hang him up. Kareem Hunt, you're averaging like 2.5 yards per carry. You can't move very fast or very much. You did your job. They signed you, a veteran who came in and was a reliable source of a couple yards or, getting a touchdown if needed. But I think it's going to be more Pacheco involved in this game. They're going to need their more skilled, younger running back who can actually have an impact on this contest, in my opinion, and coming off a bagel where he did not have a single receiving yard in that last game. I want to back him to break off a screen. All it's going to take is one, in my opinion, in this game, and there's probably going to be a couple, maybe all the running backs, honestly, get involved in the dink-a-dunk game. But Isaiah Pacheco, he's going more than his 6.5 receiving yards. I've already seen it, him breaking a tackle or two, getting 10 yards on the screen right before Mahomes gets sacked. Let's just hope they don't throw a flag on the sack on Mahomes so it doesn't cancel out the play. I guess that would just be tacked on at the end of it. So we'd be good if the refs are slurping the Chiefs. We'd be good. Okay.
It would be all right.
Yep. I'm loving Pacheco, especially in the receiving game.
Yeah, I'm in.
You got a receiver you're thinking of maybe on the Bills? I feel like we haven't talked as much about them.
Yeah, I mean, super sharp. I'm talking about Travis Kelce and Khalil Shakir. But
sure.
I don't know. The Chiefs, they play a good bit of man coverage, obviously. Khalil Shakir has been really good against both coverage, so it really doesn't matter. But he works over the middle of the field a good bit. And if you watch the Chiefs, like as good as their defense has been overall as a unit, they're vulnerable over the middle of the field. You've seen it time and time again, whether it's the game against the Texans where, a bunch of the wide receivers grubbed. I know Nico Collins did a little bit over the middle of the field, kind of a little further down, deeper routes, but you had guys like Xavier Hutchinson doing work in there too. And a lot of the guys were involved. Shakir, I think, is the go-to guy for Josh Allen. That's not a hot take. And he does a lot of his work, best work across man coverage in the middle of the field. So I think this is going to have to be the formula for the Bills, especially if the run game, which they've relied on a ton over the past couple weeks, even against really good run defenses in Baltimore and Denver. If it's not working the way they want to with James Cook, Ray Davis, and Ty Johnson, you're probably going to be forced into a little bit more of a throwing script. You want to get one of your best playmakers the ball in space, and what better guy to do it than Khalil Shakir right into the weakness of the Chiefs defense.
When everybody's trying to get cute, back in Keon Coleman, back in Amari Cooper, who's like the first guy to pop up when you type in the Bills on PrizePicks, who just hasn't done shit in months.
Yeah.
When everyone's trying to get cute, you're going back to old reliable, who nobody ever wants to take. He's not flashy, but he gets the job done. I think he encapsulates exactly what the Bills have been lacking in recent years. He's like a shittier Terry McLaurin. Not as good, but he keeps his mouth shut. He's a leader, and he's not a diva. He's not bitching about getting receptions, and he's there when you need him. He's reliable for the Bills. You might say it's square to back him. He's been their wide receiver 1 all season, Jovan. I don't think it's as square when you got guys like Amari Cooper, Keon Coleman, the flashy tight ends who everybody likes taking, who never come through. I think you're on the right side here, back in the true number 1 weapon in the receiving game here.
Yeah, definitely helps too. I think the Chiefs, which is also, I mean, good, could be good for your under, but as much as they play man coverage, I mean, they play 2 deep safeties quite a bit. Like they want to make Josh Allen take what he has been taking, frankly, over the past handful of weeks, but really all season, is just the underneath over the middle and try to avoid chunk plays as necessary. So I don't think Josh Allen's doing that with Keon Coleman or Amari Cooper or really anybody else other than the tight ends and Khalil Shakir. So I'm going to take him.
All right. You know what else I'm going to take? And this might be where I lose you.
The Pat pick.
I'm going to take Mahomes to throw a pick. How about it? Let's go through the Mahomes interception arc for the 2024-2025 season here, ladies and gents. It wasn't too long ago where Mahomes had a pick problem, folks. Mahomes had a serious pick problem, an infestation of interceptions left and right early on this season. I mean, he threw a pick in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight games to open up the season. Some of those he had multiple. And then he took a week off from throwing picks against the Broncos, which is the funniest part because it's probably the best defense he faced all season. Didn't throw a pick that game. The next game, throws 2 against the Bills. Was a major reason why they lost that game and lost big. Jovan, Pat Mahomes has not thrown a pick since that game against the Bills. Isn't that something? It's crazy. They're hanging a square up on PrizePicks for him to throw a pick. Extremely redded out chart. It's been 7 weeks since that last matchup against the Bills. And I think McDermott's defense turns up, stands on business, and they force Mahomes into throwing another pick that might end up costing them this game. Wouldn't be shocked. Hopefully it's when they're driving down the fields, in the red zone even maybe. We see a mistake from Mahomes and a big-time pick, maybe even in the end zone when he tries to get too cute. Could be good field position for the Bills or bad field position and good for the under in this game. That's how I'm hoping it plays out. But, Jovan, if the Bills can force a turnover, I talked about how good their record is when they force a turnover against their opponents this season, one of the best records in the NFL. Looking at that square on PrizePicks, I think it gives the Bills a chance, and I think Mahomes has a strong chance of throwing an interception in this game against the Bills once again.
Yeah, I know it's been a while that we've been looking at the square, but I can't disagree. The one thing that I know about really any AFC championship game that involves the Chiefs, but specifically when it's this matchup, the Bills find ways to keep themselves in the game or really give you a lot of hope one way or another with just something that's incredibly unexpected. And I don't want to act like a pick is really out of left field, some otherworldly play. But for Pat Mahomes, who hasn't thrown a pick since the first matchup, you know there's going to be some bullshit with this being the first one that he's thrown. And then the Bills are going to get a lot of hope. And then we're going to say, oh, is it finally the time? And that ends up being before Pat Mahomes is Pat Mahomes or not. Who knows? But I think there'll be something weird. So I'm with you in this one. I think this is finally the week we get one.
Yeah, and usually these, cheeky interception squares are super juicy to the under on the books if they're really red, like the Herbert one. Herbert interception square was for the Chargers all season. Typically, it's super juicy to the under. Went to go check today to see what the odds were on the Mahomes pick. -115 to the over. Hasn't thrown one in 7 weeks.
Yeah. Imagine I told you last year that AFC championship game Chiefs Bills, Josh Allen and Mahomes would be the same odds to throw a pick.
Yeah, who would have thought that?
Yeah.
You might be the only person on earth, to be honest with you, heading into this season, right? But the Josh Allen less of interceptions.
Yeah,
I think they got to square up for him as well. You think he throws
they
a pick?
do. Yeah, I mean, I do. And
I think he does too, to be
a
honest
lot
with
of
you.
that, a lot of that. I mean, I think it's going to be because he's going to have to be Superman at some time or another, whether
Yep.
it's right out of the gate or in the second half of this game when, I think they're going to be in a little bit of a trailing game script at some point. So, yeah, I think we get picks from both QBs, which has been a long time coming.
Yep. Agreed. I'll be on both those more than interceptions on PrizePicks. You want to talk about some anytime touchdown scores in this game?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's get right into it, Jovan. Let's talk about some anytime touchdown scorers we're betting in the Sunday night football game, Bills versus Chiefs. You want to get us started off?
Yeah, I'll start it off. I talked about how I thought one of the biggest, I don't know if you could say advantages, but one of the biggest areas where I think the Chiefs are going to attack the Bills when it comes to what decides this game entirely is a safety unit, which has given up big plays and been really bad in coverage all year. If you are the Chiefs, and I know they had this sprinkled in last week, like I talked about, Hollywood Brown had a deep shot chance, which could have set off the game. Xavier Worthy, everybody thought he was the only wide receiver on the field. He was very popular last week, and he got a couple of splash plays early, but never really found his footing to be like the volume guy. I think the key to this game for the Chiefs is to utilize your speed down the field. And I think it's going to be set up with a lot of the short game, the run game, Travis Kelce over the middle, just overall boring offense like we've seen from the Chiefs before they strike. And I think that strike over the top is going to be to Xavier Worthy at plus 190, who just barely found himself outside of the end zone last week on a play he got very, very close in. So I think this is his get back this week. I know he's oddly, he's been the guy in all the bigger pressure situations or I don't know, the bigger games for the Chiefs. I feel like he's always been the guy that Pat has looked to when it's not been Kelce because, Kelce wasn't huge throughout the regular season. They're kind of saving him until now, which I think is going to be the case down the field. But once we get that big shot over the top of the end zone, I think we're getting Xavier Worthy.
I think it could come on a trick play as well. Wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked at all.
They use him every type of way they can. Backfield, handoffs.
Yeah, it could be a jet sweep for all I know, too. I think
wouldn't be
his
shocked.
rushing yards, I guess I didn't mention that square, but his rushing yards back on the board. They had a disaster one last week where he lost a ton of yards, but he's getting an attempt at least. If he takes it to the crib like he did, I believe, in that first game of the season against the Ravens, I would not be shocked.
Neither would I. Xavier Worthy finding pay dirts after getting so close in that last game. I could see it. Could you see Isaiah Pacheco finding the end zone for the Chiefs after we've seen every other running back for the Chiefs or even Mahomes find the end zone in recent weeks? It's been a while since we've seen Pacheco find pay dirts. Thought it was weird that he was getting odds even shorter than that other running back who's been the stud bruiser on the goal line for this team.
Kareem.
Thought that was a little weird. Seen his odds be, shorter than Kareem, who's plus 190 right now. Pacheco plus 185. So you can even get a better number than you're seeing on this graphic if you're watching on YouTube. But Pacheco's finding the end zone for the Chiefs. If it's going to be any running back, it's going to be him. Kareem Hunt, he's gotten his licks already. It's time to unleash your beast stud running back who you've been preserving, being extra careful with in recent weeks, coming back from that injury. Now's the time to break him out and use him. Put Kareem Hunt on the sidelines. He stinks. He's washed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a coach in there, Krabs, calling plays, but we talked about this for a wild card round. Like the easiest place to attack the Bills is right up the gut. Their interior defensive line is not fantastic, and I know they held up pretty well for a majority of the game against Derrick Henry last week, but I think their hardest runner up the gut is without a doubt out of the couple running backs they have, Isaiah Pacheco. And I know he's coming back from the injury, so how close to 100% is he? We don't know. We'll never know. We're not in the locker room, but it makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah. What about Josh Allen? I feel kind of soft putting minus 115 up here on the board, but I do think it's green. I've already seen Josh Allen going bonkers in the end zone. Maybe it's to take the lead. Maybe it's to tie it up halfway through this game and just going ballistic in the end zone, letting out all his anger he's had against the Chiefs in recent years, keeping his team in this ball game with a tush push or QB sneak or something, maybe even get to the outside, dive it on the pylon like he does a time or two. But Josh Allen is finding somehow, some way to get in the end zone in this game.
Yeah, I mean, it just feels like it has to be, especially if you like the Bills to win the game, which you do.
Mm,
And you're a little against James Cook getting in the end zone, looking at the square.
exactly.
So
Exactly.
it only leaves you with so many options, Krabs. So I don't hate it at
If
all.
it's not going to be James Cook, after we already talked about him, it's got to be somebody. And it's not like they're going to put a goose egg up on the scoreboards, right? We got some points to play with here with the under. There's going to be a couple touchdowns from both teams. I think you take Josh Allen to find pay dirt. I've already seen it. Him fucking running over people left and right like his life depends on it, finding the end zone, doing it all for his team like he's done all season, all his career. Carrying.
Yep.
He's going to have to carry in this game. No pun intended.
Just might have to.
So if he carries one in the end zone. All right. Any other touchdown scores you're liking?
Not too much. I mean, obviously with my head in the game, like I wanted to put Kelsey up here too, but
right.
I'm already taking his yards. Didn't want to be that guy just to come with Travis Kelsey everything. But Xavier Worthy, I think, is worth a shot for the over the top bigger play.
Sure.
But yeah, other than that, I do think we're talking about rushing touchdowns, or they could be receiving touchdowns too. We talked about this on the first pod. I don't know what it is, why it is. Not that the guy isn't good, but they refuse to let James Cook be like a factor in the receiving game. They finally gave him a couple looks last week. We'll see if that sticks, but Ty Johnson and Ray Davis are still the guys that are out there running routes, primarily Ty Johnson. So if it somehow doesn't end up being Josh Allen or James Cook to get in the end zone, I would not be surprised if it's either of those guys. And Ty Johnson, probably more Ty Johnson in the receiving game, but Ray Davis is also definitely on mooch watch for goal line carries.
I could see it, bro. I could so see it. Ray Davis plus 425 to find the end zone. I could see him poaching one on the 1 yard line from James Cook and helping us cash that fade on his less than fantasy score for Cook. Okay.
Yeah, that would help.
Maybe we do see the poachers, the RB poachers getting up and moving in this game. Could so see it. Ty Johnson, Ray Davis getting involved. Sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Like Ty Johnson wheel route over the top. Get Josh Allen super excited. That could be like the weird play that sets it all off.
All right, Jovan. Well, I want to ask you one more question before we wrap up this pod. And I'll go first. I'll give you some time to think. But if you had to play one play this weekend in these two NFL games, it could be a PrizePicks square. It could be a touchdown score. It could be a prop. It could be a straight bet. I don't give a hoot. One play, one winner. And I'll go first and give you some time to think for this NFL Sunday. Okay, I'll go with the first half under. In the Eagles and the Commies, got a weird feeling in my plums that the Commies offense comes out slow. They're a second half team. They start out a little slow on offense. Eagles defense shines early, and the Commies defense stands on business, stacks the box, makes Jalen Hurts beat him through the air. And shocker, he can't throw the ball that very well. To be honest with you, he's not very good at throwing the ball. He's not very accurate, especially when he's banged up, especially this season, especially recently to his stud receivers like A.J. Brown. I'll tell you right now, Jovan, this first half is going under. Maybe the full game doesn't. Maybe it gets ugly for the Eagles, or maybe the Commies creep back into it. I could see the over hitting either one of those two ways. But the first half under is hitting, and it's going to be a snoozed fest early on in this one.
I'm in on that. It'll be a grinded out game. Love that for you, Krabs. Kind of soft you didn't say Commies ML plus 240, but I'll allow it.
Well, yeah. I probably should have said Tressway more than 1.5 punts inside the 20, but I digress.
Fair.
Jovan, you got a meat on tape play?
I do. It's probably not the one you would have expected, but I feel like I have already seen the Pat Mahomes completion for 35 plus yards against the Bills. Wow. So give me that longest completion for the weekend. Like I said, you're going to have them just dinking and ducking, I think, to start, managing the game, running the ball on the Bills. That's what you're supposed to do. But this feels like the game where this is why you drafted Worthy. This is why you signed Hollywood Brown. You got to utilize your speed over the top against those safeties. And Pat Mahomes has really not been, I don't want to say all that fantastic because he really hasn't needed to be, but they haven't utilized their speed down the field, I think, nearly as much as they could have to this point in the season. This is what you get guys for. Games like this, not just because it matters the most, because the biggest game of the season to this point, but in this matchup, you'd probably be damn sure Pat's going to take his shots.
Yep. As much as I hate to say it, I agree. and I'll be tailing that as well. All right. Enough talking about these two great games this weekend. You know, I feel like some years it's like everyone's complaining. They're like, this one matchup is the Super Bowl. The other matchup sucks. We got two great matchups this weekend in the NFL and the two conference championships. We're blessed with Commies versus Eagles. That's going to be cinema. Get the popcorn ready. And then Chiefs, Bills. Are you kidding me? We are blessed with these two games on Sunday, Jovan. Let's make some coins betting on them. PrizePicks lineups. Let's cash some of those puppies. And let's hit some touchdown scores as well. Okay?
Yep. Let's do it.
Well, to all the listeners out there, we hope you enjoyed watching this podcast. Please drop a like. Make sure you're subscribed on the YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Music, we appreciate you. Make sure you drop a follow over there and stay posted for more podcasts coming out down the line. Drop a follow on our YouTube. Drop a follow on our Twitch page at Bookit Sports. We're live every day at 12:30 p.m. Eastern, talking bets on YouTube and Twitch for that day on BTL. Okay, we'll be back soon with another pod. We appreciate you guys listening. Enjoy the games this weekend. Good luck out there.